Hey, man.
What's up? Happy to be here, by the way.
Good.
I need to be very clear that, like, I saw a person post online and be like, hey, guys, if you're a stand-up comedian, you don't have to do a podcast. I want you guys to know, I know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't do this because I'm like, oh, I have to have one.
Yeah, we're doing it for my stand-up career.
We do this.
I have to have it.
We do this for Tim's self-esteem.
Yeah, nobody tells me how awesome I am.
Tell him what you are without this podcast.
Nothing. There is nothing about me outside of this podcast.
He has a wife. He's got a son. Parents who love him.
But all of that is nothing compared to this podcast.
That's right. Never forget.
The existence of what you could call the anti-world. And so...
Okay, what does that mean, Tim?
So, all...
Mathematically, the existence of the Upside Down. This all leads back to Stranger Things finale. Things I learned last night.
No, finish your thought, though.
What about... Oh, that was my whole thought. Oh, yeah.
We're not doing this for your career.
Yeah, we're not doing this for my career. We're doing this because I enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
Genuinely, this is my favorite thing. So, like, I like doing this.
We did this when nobody cared, and we will continue to do this when nobody cares again.
No one has cared the entire time.
We hope more people will care, but if they don't, we don't care.
I don't care if you don't care. I don't care if you don't care.
I care a lot, actually.
I didn't like you anyway.
I do care a lot. I do care a lot.
Oh, you won't go on a date with me? Oh, I didn't like you anyway. Actually, you're ugly. And so, unless you say yes, then you are really pretty.
Okay. Well,
I don't care. You care. I don't care. You care.
You care. You're the one who cares.
No, for real though. I don't. I like doing this podcast.
Yeah, the podcast is because of the podcast, not because you're.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Cool. Anyways, have you ever heard of Paul Dirac? Paul Dirac. I think I said that wrong. Dirac. Paul Dirac.
Paul Dirac.
Paul Dirac.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of him?
Nope.
Okay, so
I've heard of his brother Off
Dirac. I hate that bit. Okay, so Paul Dirac, let's play the game. Let's play.
It's pretty easy to get Tim to just say stupid stuff.
Let's play Judge a Book by its cover.
Okay, great.
Here's a picture of Paul Dirac when he was a young man.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Either a poet or a person who wants to kill everyone. You know what I'm talking about? Like a guy who like writes poems about girls that he thinks are pretty, or a guy who writes books about how he thinks that he's the only one that should be in charge. You know what I'm talking about?
That's great.
You know, where he like writes stuff and he's just like, actually, I have it figured out and everyone else is kind of dumb and we should figure out how to get rid of him and put me in charge. Or a guy who's just like, her eyes are like the beam of sun that pierces the cloudy sky. You know?
His poems don't rhyme.
A lot of, I think we were told that poems were supposed to, but they don't have to rhyme.
They don't have to. Some of them do.
The best ones don't.
That's true. That is true. Here's a picture of him when he's a little older, holding up his passport. Does this give you any more context of?
Not at all.
What about this one? This is him younger again. We're kind of bouncing through the years for him.
What's up with his jacket?
I don't know. I didn't notice that in the smaller version. Maybe it's wrinkles. I don't know. It's very strange.
Okay.
Here's another one of him. He's old again.
Go back to the other one. Okay.
Here he is, old again.
Okay. I love an old guy.
So
he's standing in front of a chalkboard on this, though.
Yeah.
There's some math equations there. Mm-hmm. Did this guy figure out something important?
Hey, yeah, you're right. He did.
Okay.
This is Paul Dirac is a famous mathematician from the Einstein era.
Okay.
And
it would suck to be a mathematician at the same time as Einstein. You know, it's kind of like being Josh Allen right now, where it's like
you work Tim Allen's brother.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's like you worked your whole life. You were the best athlete at your school forever. Yeah. You went to college. People were like, oh my gosh, you're going to go up. And then you're in the league at the same time as Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And that's who everyone talks about.
But he didn't do it when Mahomes wasn't there. So
that's what I'm saying.
Is he really that great?
That's what I'm saying. But like, no. I'm talking about like,
even
we call it the Michael Jordan era of basketball.
Yeah.
Where it's like there were so many other really great players.
But you only think of that one.
And that's what I'm saying.
But I will say, like,
that's why right now when you think of the podcasting era, you're going to think of it as the Jaron Myers era. Okay? Oh yeah, the Jaron Myers era of podcasting. Yeah, when people just had podcasts that no one listened to.
That's what defines the era.
I'm not trying to be one of the greats.
But I will say, like, that time Schrodinger was the same time. We know Schrodinger. So there's other people that you actually do know. It's not just Einstein. But I do get the point you're saying. Yeah,
but the main one you think of.
You do think of Einstein.
If you were to draw a scientist, who are you drawing?
Probably Einstein.
Yeah.
Einstein or Neil deGrasse Tyson. if you're telling me to draw a scientist.
And if you're drawing him with pencil.
Yeah.
Just drawing.
Yeah.
Kind of similar drawings, right?
Neil deGrasse Tyson and
mustache, big hair.
Yeah.
A face with eyes.
Is Neil deGrasse Tyson Einstein? Is Neil deGrasse Tyson just Einstein?
No, I'm saying that there's the look.
Oh, yeah. They do have like that science look.
Okay.
Interesting. So Dirac is interesting because he was born in Bristol, England.
If you asked me to draw a scientist, I would draw Jimmy Neutron.
This is the only scientist that matters to me. So he was born in, what did I say? London? Did I say London?
I don't know.
Bristol, England. He had a Swiss father and an English mother. And he initially went to school to become an electrical engineer.
Okay.
That bored him, so he left and went to study mathematics at Cambridge. And he actually studied at Cambridge under Einstein. And he was an interesting guy because he was very, what's the word I should use? Very nonchalant isn't right. Nonchalant is wrong. He just had like a very even temper, and he did not talk much.
Okay.
So little that his friends actually coined a term, and I shouldn't say coined a term. They were the only ones who used it, but they created a unit of measurement that they called a Dirac or a Dirac, and a Dirac stands for 1 word an hour because that's all he spoke. And so he speaks.
I'll try to do that today.
I'm going to speak in Diracs today.
Starting now.
I hate you. I wonder how mean I would have to get you to break from this bit. And that's exactly what he would do. He would respond in facial expressions a lot. There's a famous story where later in his life, when he was a professor, he was giving a big lecture at a university, and there's like a moderator, a whole thing. It was like a big lecture that a bunch of people came to, and there was like distinguished scientists in the room. And so he's doing the lecture, and he's doing equations on the board, and someone interjects in the middle of the lecture. It's like, excuse me, I don't understand the equation in the top left of the chalkboard. And there was this long, uncomfortable silence because he just stared at the guy. And it was so long and so uncomfortable that eventually the moderator stepped in and was like, are you going to answer his question? And he said, that wasn't a question. That was a comment.
I like this guy. I like that a lot. He didn't ask a question.
I just love that the guy said that and he just stared
I don't understand the thing on the top left. And you're just looking at him like... It's almost like you're looking at him like, then ask me to explain it. Like, that's such a power move. Like, that's not him being like, will you explain that further? That's him going, I don't understand that. And he just goes... Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Okay.
Anyways, I'm going to continue talking here. I just love that he paused and just waited and just stared at him. That's so funny to me. But yeah, he was a very quiet individual, didn't speak much. And he loved math. I cannot overemphasize enough how much
this guy loves math.
He loved math.
This guy loves math.
And it was this big deal because he in multiple occasions would describe equations as beautiful. And he said, this is a beautiful equation. Like, this is a perfect, beautiful equation. And he actually, in his free time, like, his favorite pastime would just be rethinking famous equations and trying to solve them in different ways. And so he would kind of break apart equations down to their basic pieces and then solve them in different ways. That was what he did for fun. He loved math. And so he did the electrical engineering, and he's like, I don't like the build stuff part. Oh, if I could just do this with just the math part. And then he's like, oh, I can. And so that's when he
I can do just math.
That's when he went to Cambridge to start to study mathematics. And he's there studying theoretical mathematics. And at the same time, there are kind of two worlds colliding in the world of physics. And I want to pull this up to make sure that I reference this correctly. There's two theories actually from Einstein and Schrodinger. And so there's Einstein's general relativity or special relativity. That was a big theory that had entered the scientific realm. And then Schrodinger's quantum mechanics. And these were both...
and his cat.
Yeah, his cat was his cat was part of that. And both of these were proven through mathematics and experiments in philosophy and logic. And they were well received within the scientific community. But there was parts of them that did not mesh well together. And there was questions that if both of these are true, then there's some sort of issue here within our mathematics. And so Paul sat down. He's like, I love math. I'm going to see if I can figure out where the issue is within this equation. And so he sat down and he basically took Einstein's E equals mc squared and he reverse engineered it.
I don't know what that means either.
E equals mc squared. E stands for energy.
No, I like this.
E stands for energy. M stands for mass. And C stands for the constant of the speed of light squared. And so what you're finding is if you take the mass of any material or molecule and multiply that by the constant of speed of light squared, you're going to get the amount of energy, like potential energy within that object. So if all of that thing got converted into energy, that's how much energy is resting in that thing.
It's not true.
Okay. But it did not...
None of that's true.
But that did not mesh.
He made it up.
That did not mesh with quantum mechanics. Because quantum mechanics kind of taught that there was this like quantum world that we don't understand that is also dictating all these things that are happening within the known universe.
I was in math league at my school. And I was single, by the way. And and I... could not tell you what any of this says. I mean, I can understand like moving MC to this, but like I don't know what any of this is.
So what he did here is he basically took the E equals mc squared equation and he pulled the quantum mechanic equations into this and basically meshed them together.
Right.
And there's a simplified version of his equation called the Dirac equation, and this is the concise version of this. So essentially what this equation is in parentheses, you have an imaginary number multiplied by the Pauli matrices, multiplied by the derivative in four dimensions,
obviously.
Subtracted by Fermion mass, which a Fermion, do you know what a Fermion is?
Yep.
Okay.
Keep going.
Subtracted for the Fermion mass, and then all of that is in parentheses.
Explain to Alex, though, real quick.
A fermion is the opposite of a boson. So a boson...
And you know what a boson is, obviously, right? Alex, you're not dumb. Yeah. Me and Alex, we know what bosons are.
You're probably familiar with...
Hey. I know what a boson is because I'm no bozo. I'll tell you that.
You know what the Higgs boson is, right?
Yes.
You've heard of that?
Yeah.
So the Higgs boson is like this building piece of all matter. Like underneath all matter, the Higgs boson existed.
Right.
The boson is a molecule, an atomic.
Talk to me now. Let's just pretend I went to public school.
So a boson is an atomic particle.
Yeah. What I like about this, though, here's what I like. Is that if I dig far enough, it'll expose that he doesn't know what it is either. But if you keep it at a high enough level, he can talk about it. But if you go a little further, you can feel him typing. You know what I'm saying?
So a boson has a spin that is a full integer. So where a fermion has a fractional spin.
I'm only thinking about when you say integer, I am only thinking about like people listen to this podcast with their kids in the car. We have like 13-year-old fans, and there's just a 13-year-old in the back of a minivan right now, and their brain is just melted. They're just like, derivative of fourth dimension, fermion, hyper, and they're just back there like, I get it. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Things I Learned Last Night. If you like this show, we would love to see you on our Patreon. It's a great way to financially support the show. We don't make money from this. It just helps us to pay the people who do make money from this, like Alex and Robert, our editor, and maybe one day me and Tim.
Maybe one day.
But only if you join.
Only if you join. We can't
We're
get
waiting.
paid
We can't get paid
until you pay.
We can't feed Tim's kid until you join.
He's hungry. In the arms of an angel. Here's what I should say. When I look at all this, the only thing in here that I feel like I even somewhat understand is the fermion mass, because the fermion is the opposite of a boson.
Right.
A particle that has a fractional spin ratio. So it's just the mass of this atomic particle, basically.
Okay.
That's the one thing that I feel like I even relatively understand here. And then you multiply all that by the wave function, and it leads to zero. And this was a big deal because what it did is it merged Einstein's special relativity with Schrodinger's quantum mechanics and showed that there was a link in it, and like a mathematical provable link. And a bunch of other mathematicians and scientists tested this, and they were able to say, yes, this does actually like link the two, and like this is the missing piece.
Okay.
So he got the Nobel Prize for this. This was a huge deal.
Yeah. Which again, Nobel Prize, completely image laundering. But yes.
But what this did that was arguably just as significant, if not more significant, is it predicted the existence of what you could call the anti-world. And so
okay, what does that mean, Tim?
So
proves mathematically the existence of the upside down. This all leads back to Stranger Things finale.
So here's the thing. All matter is created when photons, two high-energy photons collide.
Sure.
And then when that collision occurs, what we get out of it is we get both matter and antimatter. And so matter, which we have long known about, here's a hydrogen molecule. And that hydrogen molecule is made up of a single proton and a single electron. And the proton is neutral. It doesn't have any charge. Electron has a negative charge. And then inside it are quarks. Quarks have both. Inside the proton are quarks, and quarks have both charges.
Obviously.
They just fill up that proton.
Can we just take a second as we're looking at another graph? Another illustration here. That Tim is, again, trying to explain complex scientific details to us that he barely understands himself, to be clear.
I barely understand this. Yeah.
And I was excited when you brought up a person at the beginning of this. You were like, hey, it's going to be easier. And we've gone from iodine to now we're sitting here going like, so there's hydrogen and there's anti-hydrogen, right? And I just need you to know I am unwillingly doing this. This podcast, I said at the beginning because I knew that you probably wouldn't listen this far. But if you did listen this far, you're in a position to help because I don't want to be here. This is actually the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I am being forced to do this against my will. Keep going, Tim. Explain science to us. I'm going to trip you so hard later.
Alex, what did I say to you between episodes? What did I say to you between episodes?
Dude, he wasn't listening to you. Come on. You can see his face where he's like, oh no. What did you say to me? I got to go pee.
Teacher just called
we should turn the... Alex, what did I say to you earlier? What did I say to you last class? Did you write that down? Did you put that in your notes? Alex, what did we talk about last week? Huh? Alex, did you do the homework? Yeah. I'm going to trip you so hard, dude.
You left the room and I waited for you to be outside of earshot. And I was like, it's funny that he said that or what he said about this episode, because next episode I'm talking about antimatter.
Yeah, you were like the last one. You got called out for being ambitious. And then we're going for this.
Okay.
And here's the thing. When matter is created, it creates hydrogen. This hydrogen molecule is created. We know what it's made out of. Antimatter.
Yeah, we know.
Antimatter is also created. So you have an antimatter is basically just the opposite of this.
So ridiculous that you're trying to do this.
So within it, there's an antiproton. Both protons are neutral. So that doesn't change. But we have what they call a positron, or you also can call
And here's
it
the thing, man.
anti-electron.
I'm not even going to try to help you make this interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, don't worry. I will. I'm excited about it. The positron is the opposite of electron. So it has a negative
positron.
charge. So it has a negative
Oh, shoot.
charge.
No, I'm trying. My bad.
It has a negative charge. And all the quarks...
The positron has a negative charge?
Yeah. No, the positron has a positive charge.
I was gonna say, that makes
Electron
sense.
has a negative charge. Positron has a positive
Right.
charge. And then all the quarks, they're just the opposite. They have the opposite charges.
Right.
What's really interesting about this is these things are both created during that collision. And when they collide, if they collide back with each other, if matter and antimatter were to come into contact with each other, they annihilate each other is the word that scientists use. Because there's
zero.
Yeah, there's nothing exists because it's a negative. It's a positive and negative. Like they cancel each other out.
Okay.
They're exact opposites. And what we see, and this has since been observed, we've actually done experiments to observe that this is what happens. When these, this is so much worse than I thought it was gonna, in my picture. It's like,
low-res image. Robert, when you put this on the screen, you have to like de-hance the image.
just make it so much worse. Because this looks bad on my screen, but it's like you could.
Did the
tell.
brightness on the TV just adjust as well? Because
It probably was just
got
like,
worse.
oh, yikes.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So what is happening here? I'll explain this.
This looks like RuneScape graphics, dude. That's crazy.
It looks so much better on my screen. It still doesn't look good, but it's so much better than this. What happens is when you have antimatter and matter collide.
What's very clear is that this used to have a white background is the problem.
Yeah, and they cut it out.
And then they cut the white background out. Yeah.
When it collides, what you get out of it in both directions of the collision, in like opposite directions of the collisions, you get gamma rays. And so just the photons come out of it, and it's pure energy. So 100% of the mass of the antimatter, 100% of the mass of the matter come out in the form of gamma rays as energy. And so what's interesting about this is that potential energy from E equals mc squared that we almost can never realize because we can't. Anytime we create energy, it's not fully efficient. So we only get a percentage of that energy out of any sort of reaction that creates whatever energy we're creating. But with antimatter collisions, 100% of the mass of that matter is converted into energy, both for the antimatter and the actual matter.
Right.
And what is interesting is these exist out in the world in a lot of ways. We know that from the beginning of the universe, when everything was created,
what do we know about that time, Tim?
There was a collision of particles.
This is interesting that this is where you're trying to go with that. Hey, man. Yeah, I'm listening.
There's a collision of particles. And what's really interesting is we can see, we can observe that there is somehow more matter than antimatter in the universe.
Okay.
But that shouldn't be possible because we know when these photons collide, it creates matter and antimatter. And when matter and antimatter collide, they cancel each other out and they annihilate.
So therefore, they're equal.
And so the universe should be nothing but light. We should have nothing but gamma rays in the universe, but we have matter. And so this is known as the Bohrian problem, where there is to every there's a 1,000,000,000 to 1 ratio of matter in the universe, where for all the antimatter in the universe, one matter didn't have a match. One like particle of matter didn't have an antimatter match, and we don't understand why. And
what?
So when
there's 1,000,000,001, so for every piece of antimatter in the world.
So there's a billion. I should say there's a billion pairs.
Okay.
In that, there's 999,999,999 pairs that had matter and antimatter, and they cancel each other out.
There's one.
But there's one where for some reason that antimatter didn't have a pair, or that matter didn't have an antimatter pair and was able to continue on for some reason. And that's how we got everything. All the matter that exists comes from this mystery, basically, of how we don't understand why there's no antimatter. What was that face?
Just the mystery.
And so this is one of the things that...
What does Ken Ham say about that?
Ken Ham doesn't know about that.
I just love that on Threads you've been increasingly antagonistic to the Ken Ham Answers in Genesis account. That you've been responding and been like, you guys are doing really bad theological work.
I didn't know you saw that. I got really mad because I just realized the other day.
Yeah, they've been trying to pretend they're the Bible Project, it looks like.
Yeah, because it's happened to me a couple times. I've seen this and I've been like, that's weird that the Bible Project posted this. And then I was like, oh, it's not the Bible Project. And then the other day I was like, why do I think this is? And I looked and I was like, the logos are almost the same.
Yeah.
And they definitely did that after the Bible Project.
Right.
And that makes me mad. You're like piggybacking off of a good organization that is doing good, sound, scholarly work while you're doing whatever conspiracy theory crap you're doing.
Yeah. Building a giant boat for money laundering for sure.
It's insane. And it makes me mad. And
we're not fans of the Creation Museum.
I didn't realize you could see that.
But we will say this week's sponsor is the Creation Museum. And we're really grateful that they paid us to tell you to go there. You can go see how dinosaurs and humans probably existed at the same time, according to Ken Ham. And also the Earth is, what does he say? It's 6,012 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a whole thing. DVD set.
And if you disagree with him, he'll argue with you right there.
He will argue with you in the arc.
Yeah, which is it's like part of the experience.
And it's bad. So you go.
Use code You're a Liar.
You're a liar. You're a liar.
Oh,
You're
cool.
a liar.
That's a 20% discount.
And it's for, because they made it for the dumbs. It is, the promo code is not spelled you're a liar as in like YOU''RE. It is YOURALIER. They made it for
They made it for those of you who are like, oh, I gotta take this deal.
I grew up, it's so crazy. I was talking to my parents this weekend about the shift in their life, about how we were those people.
Yeah.
And like my mom did say that when the church, the cult that we were a part of, started doing the Ken Ham DVD series, that was a thing where she was like, I think we got to get out of this. This is
nice.
I don't think we believe this. This is weird.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like we grew up being the kind of people who would have gone to the Creation Museum.
Yeah.
You know? And now we're so far from that.
Yeah.
That it's like, it's almost like incomprehensible to us.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
It's like, I think that's where the museum is in comprehensible.
I was about to just like be like, I'm pretty sure it's Tennessee. I was about, maybe Kentucky. It's Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Comprehensible Kentucky.
I hate you so much for that.
Yeah, I'm a pro. So keep going.
So antimatter is significant. We are trying to understand it. It's one of these things we know exists. We know for all matter that exists, there is an antimatter pair, or theoretically an antimatter pair.
Sure.
And we're trying to understand it. And that's part of CERN, the Large Hadron Collider. They're trying to discover a lot of things. But one of the things they're trying to understand is why did matter continue? Like matter should have been canceled out in the Big Bang, but it was not. And we're still here. How did that happen? So trying to understand this. What is something pretty incredible happened earlier this week that will take a while for us to see the impacts of this, because CERN conducted an experiment to see if they could transport antimatter. Because here's the thing about antimatter. If it touches any matter, it annihilates both of them. They both disappear. And a lot of energy comes out of that reaction. And so that's something that's never been done before, transporting these things, because any container you put it in.
But where is antimatter?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean?
It's all around.
That's a good question.
It's all around you. No, I'll tell you. Antimatter.
I can feel you all around me. Antimatter annihilating. There is a counseling appointment happening next door, and I know because they turned the sound machine on, and that sound machine does nothing compared to my songs.
It keeps us from hearing them. But it doesn't keep them from hearing us.
It keeps us from hearing you, but yeah. Hey, sorry I asked about your husband. Would you maybe consider wearing a t-shirt that says I'm going through a divorce so I don't do that? You can buy I am going through a divorce. Please don't bring up my spouse t-shirts on our website right now. Those are pretty easy to design. Those are on there right now. I'm going through a divorce. Please don't ask about my spouse.
The great thing about that shirt is you'd probably get a lot of questions about that shirt.
Don't ask about my spouse. I'm going through a divorce. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have them in different colors. We've got something that say I'm getting divorced or I'm divorcing my, like we got different options. We have I'm going through a divorce, and then we've got my wife is divorcing me, and then I've got I'm divorcing my wife. So that you can tell people.
You can tell, you can see the situation.
Right away, you can be like, hey, I'm the one.
It's me. It's not bad.
And we're running Facebook ads on those to really target the right audience. It's like the lady who came to my stand-up show, and I was like, "Are you enjoying the show so far?" She's like, "The first row," and she was like, "Sure." And I was like, "Sure, that's not a good answer." She goes, "Well, you haven't hit my group yet."
What?
And I said, "Who's your group? Are you single? Or she goes, "Well, you said single. You said married." And I said, "Are you divorced?" And she goes, "Widowed." Yeah. Probably wasn't gonna.
Bring up.
I wasn't gonna in the middle of my comedy show be like, "Hey, has anybody here lost the love of their lives to the horrible thing of death that haunts all of us? Anybody here gone through the horrible grief of losing a life partner that they've built a decades of life with just to?" No? Anybody? I have a really good joke about that you're gonna love. You're gonna love this joke I have. Crazy.
Anyways,
unless you killed him.
Then I got lots of jokes about you killing your spouse.
Oh boy, am I sick. I sure do need Tim Stone's Get Well Quick Trick. And what is it? It's simply chug an entire gallon of orange juice. Wow, I forgot. And then this shirt reminded me. I'm so glad that I have this shirt as a public service announcement, a public health service to other people around me. Do your part. Get this shirt. Shop.TILLN.com.
Antimatter, the way we get it is it's created in a lot of different ways. Like naturally, and it's created in labs all the time. But because matter and antimatter annihilate each other, it's really hard to capture. And so a pretty reliable way to create it is within the Large Hadron Collider. And when that collision happens, we create antimatter and matter because we're shooting photons at each other.
Right. Shooting them right at each other.
And there's a device that they have within this whole system called the Penning trap. And essentially, let me get a picture of this. Essentially what it is it's this little tube that through a series of electrodes and magnets creates this small vacuum that little bit of matter or antimatter can shoot into and then just kind of float in the center of this vacuum in this tube. It requires a lot of energy to contain these things. And so what they did is they took one of these out of the full collider and they put it in this large assembly. And so in the middle of that, you can see the Penning trap in there.
Okay.
And this whole thing here, this is a graph of what it looks like, but this is like the actual device. So essentially, it's this big power unit that within it has this magnetized, cryogenically sealed unit.
For those listening, it looks like a giant computer, but when I say giant, like this is probably 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
It looks like maybe.
Yeah.
So not like huge, but it looks like an old desktop computer, like, the tower. But
yeah, it does
silver.
look like that, actually. And then within it is this little component that's holding these antimatter particles. And there's a vacuum. It's like a artificial vacuum in there that's holding it. And so they created these particles from the collider, captured them in Penning traps, put the Penning trap in this big system that basically was going to sustain the Penning trap and keep the Penning trap from moving or shifting at all in transport. And so it's this big thing that is going to make it not move. And they put it in a truck.
Okay.
And they said, let's see if we can drive this around. And so they spent a half an hour on the road. First time anyone's ever tried to transport this, driving around the CERN campus.
And what happens if they do, like, were they expecting this thing to, like, blow up or what?
So this is what's really interesting about antimatter. When we're talking single particles, like an immense amount of energy is released, but it's equivalent to the amount of mass of these particles, which is not a lot.
Right.
And so like this does shoot out gamma rays and it's detectable. We know what's happening, but it's not something that is going to cause damage to anything.
Okay.
You need, I shouldn't say significant amounts. You need to be approaching a gram. Well, probably not even a gram, approaching micrograms of these molecules for it to damage something.
Okay.
And this is just single particles. And so
Sure.
we would need billions more of these particles for it to be able to damage anything. And so the worst thing that could happen here is you lose the antimatter,
Sure.
which cost a lot of money to create because you had to run the collider to create them. And so it's a loss of money. But what is really exciting about this is it was successful. They drove it around, they drove back to the lab, and all the matter was sustained. They had about 100 antimatter particles within this, and it all survived. And what makes this so significant is because this is the one place where we're actually, in the world right now, where we're actually able to capture antimatter to study it. But because the nature of the Large Hadron Collider runs on magnets, those magnets interfere with most devices we could use to study it. And so this is not a place where you could actually do a lot of really good science with these particles. So transporting them off-site is what would allow us to be able to actually research these and study these and understand them more.
And this just happened this week.
This happened earlier this week.
Okay.
And so this success, there is this this unit has about a 4-hour power span, and so we could travel it up to we could transport it up to 4 hours away from the collider, meaning we can get to some other labs to actually do some real science. And what makes this so significant is because of the potential energy in antimatter. If we could figure out a way, right now, it is very slow to produce it. We only get a couple particles at a time. And it's incredibly expensive. It costs literally trillions of dollars to produce these. And so it's not economically viable to use these in any way. But the amount of energy would be if we could do some research and figure out how to create these in a more viable, economically, like much cheaper scenario. This would be unbelievable in terms of the amount of energy we could create out of this. For example,
We could power the world.
yes, there is. Let me pull up the math on this. Are you done? He just starts screaming. He just starts screaming. He did this yesterday, waiting in line at TSA for 6 hours. Just watching screams full volume on his phone. How many Scream TikToks do you think you'd have to watch in public to get kicked out of a place?
Are you okay?
Okay, I'm done with this bit. Jeez.
I just like to look up screaming. Sometimes, if you feel unsafe in an Uber, just go on TikTok and search screaming and then just watch loud screaming videos, because then the driver's going to feel more unsafe than you, I
You're going to
promise.
shift the fear.
Hey, let's do a quick thing right now. If you're in an Uber right now and you feel unsafe, listen to this, like play this video out loud.
Turn this up. And honestly, you might want to take your earphones out for a second.
No. I promise I'm not going to do it. I'm not gonna, oh, you're in an Uber right now? Oh, you feel unsafe because the guy looks kind of creepy? You said he smells bad. That's a little rude. Oh. Okay.
It does sound like he smells bad. You're right.
You said the music's too loud? He keeps playing bad music?
What music is he playing?
No, put the knife away.
We don't need to use a knife in the Uber.
Tell him you're getting divorced.
He should know. He should know so he doesn't ask you a question and feel uncomfortable about it.
All right. Well, we'll see you when you get here. the knife factory. We'll see you when you get dropped off here at the gun store.
Gun store. Okay, so a kilogram of antimatter,
Sure.
which is a lot. We should say that is a lot to create.
Yeah.
We don't have a good
Over the
system.
legal amount you're allowed to carry for sure.
We don't have a system.
How
to
much
create.
antimatter you got on you right now? Probably like a kilogram.
Yeah, too much. No, it literally the calculation right now, based on how much we can create in a single collision in the collider, if we ran the collider 100% of the time, it would take us 1 billion years to create a kilogram.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's how slow we're creating.
Okay.
We need to find a way to create faster antimatter if we ever want to use it, or to create antimatter more reliably and quicker and cheaper. But if we could get to a point where we could create 1 kilogram of antimatter and use it, that would create 180 petajoules of energy, which could power the entire Earth for a day. And so if we could get to the point
We would
where
go through that in a day though.
yeah, but it would one single plant running a kilogram with literally a kilogram of antimatter could power the Earth for a day. And so if we could get to a system where we could reliably produce this, and it would have to be in multiple kilograms consistently, pretty cheap, then this could be a massive producer of energy in the planet. And
Wow.
it's super clean. There's no byproduct. There's 100% burn because there's no ash, there's no smoke, there's nothing that comes out of it. 100% of these are converted, and 100% of these molecules are converted into energy.
So we would be able. You think we would be able to power like our cars and cities and everything?
Yeah, you could power everything and to be 100% clean, which would be an incredible discovery.
Right.
Also, it's the same thing with like space travel, because right now, again, all of our chemical reactions that we use to power or to burn engines for rockets, they are not completely efficient. There's byproducts that come out of it, and they are relatively slow in terms of the amount of energy that they create. If you could generate a antimatter rocket that ran on antimatter fuel, one, it would consume significantly less fuel and create significantly more energy, be completely clean, and you could theoretically reach speeds that are significant fractions of the speed of light. So you could be, we could get to the point where we could literally be able to transport through space into other star systems in the matter of just a couple of years, versus right now where it's hundreds of years, if not thousands, to get anywhere interesting. And so
Yeah.
this is, again, a lot of science has to happen for us to get to the point where we can use this. But this is kind of that first groundbreaking step in getting antimatter somewhere where it could be studied. And then if we can figure out how to mass produce it relatively cheap, this could potentially be kind of a watershed moment in the history of the world.
Wow.
Also, it could be used for bombs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need very much of it. And what's very significant about it
What does the other end of this graphic say? How many nuclear bombs detonated together?
all nuclear bombs that
all
exist on the
nuclear
Earth.
bombs. 30,000 warheads, or is it 130,000 warheads?
No, it's 30,000
30. Are you sure?
simultaneously exploded. Yeah, we have like, I think we have like 12, 13,000.
That's if 30,000 warheads in total simultaneously exploded. That would be 7,000
Militons of TNT.
Yeah, and then 1 ton of antimatter. But yeah, that's 1 ton of antimatter.
Yeah, it's a lot of antimatter. But yeah, it would be 21,500 militons of TNT, which I looked it up. These conversions are a little rough, but theoretically, compared to what we see from like nuclear blasts, the blast radius of this would be larger than the Earth.
Yeah.
So
Wider than Australia for sure.
wider than Australia for sure. What's significant though is in these bombs, realistically, what would happen is you'd be using like micrograms of it, so that way it'd be a little bit more controlled, and the blast radius wouldn't be the entire planet. But one, it's clean. There's no radiation, so there's not like a nuclear winter that you get out of it. So the scary thing about this is these become like actually somewhat viable nuclear scale weapons, because it doesn't destroy the whole planet if you use it. It just decimates that location. And so it's the mutually assured destruction thing that we get with nuclear bombs kind of goes away with antimatter bombs. If you use small enough antimatter bombs.
Why did we get to this point at the end? Why did you bring this up? I don't think you had to do this part. We could have left this out. But
Well-
instead, you're like, well, it does actually make warfare, significantly more horrific. But anyway, next week we're going to talk about that. You're like, why are you doing that?
Well, the explosion, I don't know if you would even call it more horrific because the explosion doesn't actually like explosions now, like there's just a bunch of energy and it burns things up and destroys things. This like just annihilates things. So if you're in the blast radius, you just disappear completely. All your matter is just gone. And there's just a vacancy in the space that you occupied, in the space that the whole area that blast was in that occupied. So maybe more horrific. I don't know. Now that I say that out loud, it's
it's actually less horrific because you're just gone.
You just disappear.
You not only just die, but you're gone. This
Well,
is really
I have
great.
more exciting
No, I love
I
our
have better
show.
versions.
I love our
I have
show.
better uses. I have better uses.
Sure.
We could talk about better things.
Please.
Forget about war stuff. This is actually used today, though. We actually have an antimatter use case that we use today in PET scans.
Okay.
Which are PET scans stand for positron emission tomography. And the way we do this is really interesting. Essentially, we disguise a radioactive molecule as a sugar, and we put it in this solution, and we inject it into people. And when that goes inside the body, the radioactive elements within inside that disguised molecule disperses throughout the bloodstream, and then it breaks down. And when it breaks down, it emits a positron and an electron, antimatter and matter. And then when those collide, it shoots off those gamma rays. So what we do is we inject that into your system. It goes throughout all your bloodstream. We put you in one of those devices that look just like a CT scan. And that CT scan waits for the two gamma rays to shoot out of you. And then it traces those back to the point where it came. And then from that, it creates a 3D model of your insides.
Of your insides. Crazy.
And we use these to detect tumors, map the brain before brain surgeries. Like we use these for really advanced medical imaging.
That's crazy.
Which is unbelievable.
Again, those are the things. It's like if humanity were to just have to reset, I would never figure that out for you. It would be
gone.
It would be a billion years before we figured that out.
But here's the craziest thing about all of this. We can't technically tell at great distances the difference between matter and antimatter because light is still light. And so the photons emitted, or the photons that emit from antimatter and matter, and the photons that reflect off matter and antimatter are the same. And so there are scientists who theorize that potentially some of the solar systems that we see in deep space may be antimatter solar systems because these things are opposite of matter, but they are the same in terms of their properties. And so in the same way that our entire world is made up of different matter molecules, there could be an antimatter world or an antimatter universe complete with star systems and planets and living beings that are completely made up of these antimatter molecules. And we would not know until we were able to look at these things closely under a microscope. And so theoretically, there is this opposite universe that is an exact opposite copy of all of us in terms of matter and antimatter. And if for some reason we were to ever touch, we would annihilate each other. And so there potentially is an antimatter version of you looking up at the stars every night while you look up at the same stars as the matter version of you.
And he says, fiddle on. Oh, you're in an Uber? And you don't feel safe? You should listen to the Kardashev scale episode of TILLN. Ask the Uber driver to put it on. Have him search things I learned last night. That's what you should do. You should be sharing this episode with Uber driver. Yeah. No, just have him do it.
Have him do it.
And then ask him if he considers supporting us on Patreon. Or her. I guess I'm being a little... Well... Yeah. Okay, so him. Ask him to support us on Patreon for next week's episode.
Also,
okay.
Ask him.
What'd he say? He said no? Oh, yeah.
Well,
don't worry. A lot of our listeners also say no. So...
If you like this episode, like and subscribe also. Say that to him.
Say
that to him.
If you don't like and subscribe, I'm going to leave a 3-star review.
Threaten your Uber drivers with bad reviews if they don't like our podcast.
All right. All right, we'll see you
This is
soon.
such a long
We'll see you soon
outro.
at the gun store.